I think that if anything is going to change in Iran or in other countries as well, in Muslim countries, they have to the people in exile, they have to do something, that because they have the freedom of speech, they have all the options, but they're silent. I'm so mad at people outside of the country. Like Iranians, they just choose to go back to Iran, and then with doing that, they just say, I am not speaking against anything. I'm scared of my life to do that if I'm going back. So.
But okay, but do you how? But and if like I'm outspoken, you're outspoken. How do you think that's going to make any difference? That's like, how is that eventually going to change the Iranian government?
Because I think if the problem with Islam, with the problem that Islam has with democracy, and if it's going to be reformed, it's going to happen outside of the Muslim countries, because you can't without inside the countries. And if you're not a Muslim, like I'm not and you're not, and if we want to help those reformers, or at least educate people about Islam, because a lot of Muslims don't really know about Islam either.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen outside of the countries, because it's getting worse and worse. Like before we said Turkey and Indonesia, these were the free countries where Islam and democracy were like coexisting, and
now it's fake news.
Yeah.
now like all these countries are going downhill. Turkey is going downhill, that's for sure. It's starting to Erdogan with this Islamist government. And then Indonesia, they passed like another. There's this mayor talking about concentration camps for gays, like he wants to. So moderation is. Extremism is very appealing these days. And we have to have a very strong counter message that is not the cute Muslim argument, but rather the why Islam is wrong to begin with, or why extremism is wrong.
Yeah. You know how you said you don't like the word murtad or ex-Muslim, but we use it anyway? I kind of feel the same way about extremism.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a polite word for just piety.
It's just Islam, right? It's like mainstream Islam.
Yeah, I think moderate is that goes off the relative aspect. Like you've got Islam, then you can be moderate, where you select or you don't take parts of it, or you practice it with less intensity. But extremism is, I don't think these people are extremists. I think they're just very adherent to scripture.
I think the word extremist is about how strongly you follow the words of. For someone is like extremist communist, right? They're like, they follow the words of Karl Marx literally.
Yeah.
And extremist Muslims are those who follow the words of the Quran and the Hadith literally. Because those who are not extremists will be like, oh, well, like, but he didn't actually mean that, or there is a context, or it's metaphorical. These are the cute Muslims argument, right?
But they don't have any school to point to. Like,
no,
they don't,
all,
because in
like
Judaism and in Christianity, they kind of do have other interpretations, and they say, oh, we do it this way, and then they have a school, they can say, oh, that's my school, But the cute Muslims, they don't have any school. They're just bullshitting us.
Cute Muslim school. Cute Muslim schools for girls. And
for themselves too.
But if if Islam is true, and if there is Allah and stuff, why wouldn't you be an extreme follower of God? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It should be if Islam is true, and if hell is real, and paradise is there, the most logical thing to do is to be extremely focused on doing everything that God wants. In fact, anything other than that would be idiotic, right? If there is a hell, I would be extremely concerned to make sure I don't end up there. If this life is temporarily and the other life is forever, anything that I do for this life would be a complete waste of time, because this life is
we're assuming though that people are rational, completely rational by nature. Because I remember when I dabbled in it a bit, my whole thing. Even when people ask me now, like people in my family will be like, "What if it's real?" Pascal's wager. What if it's all real?
Yeah.
What would you do? And I told him, like, well, I have no problem if it's all real. Even if it's all real, like I'm 100% confident I'm going to heaven.
Yeah, because we're good people.
And the reason for that is just because I know about binary pulsars, and I know about time dilation. I know those things are real. So I know that whoever created all of this stuff also created that stuff. So that is obviously not a dumb person. So even when I was dabbling in it, I just didn't think that same being that created all of these like incredible things in the universe, or the process of evolution, even if there was somebody who created it, I just didn't think that person would really care if I ate pork or not. So even when I dabbled in it, I never took the Quran seriously. It was almost fact for me that this can't be.
This, as an Islamist, this would be my response to you. You think God?
I know exactly what the response will be. That's why it's fun telling them going to heaven.
Well, because when a Muslim says like I don't think God, there is a God, but I don't think God cares about this. Like you think God is that limited to not be able to care about every single thing extremely, like just he's the creator of the universe.
But he might run out of charge. That's the problem. But if he has to look at every single thing, his charge will be done in the next, just like Samsung Galaxy. It might explode.
That's when the Mahdi comes back.
That's when Mahdi comes back. I mean, that's actually the argument I've been through when I was a teenager. It's like, is God really, like, I was protecting God by not being a Muslim. I was like, God is so great that this book has to be false. So I was like actually defending.
That's kind of where I was
defending God. I was like, this is the creator of the universe. I was like watching all this Carl Sagan shit and all this like astronomy and then I look at the Quran.
If I could count how many ex-Muslims have told me that they watch Carl Sagan.
Yes, it's really amazing the power of scientific discovery and it's like so I was defending God. I was like, this is so, like, the world is so beautiful to the way that how come like religion is trivializing God. Like he cares about you. I don't know, he wants you to have missionary position and no oral sex. He's so worried about sex. He's so worried about trivial things. And also the stories of like prophets. I mean, they're fun, but like, is this really the best way to communicate your message? I mean, I was in this Reformed Jewish synagogue, and I was with my ex at the time, and they had like a story of Abraham, right? And like beheading your son and stuff. And he's like, the story is about loyalty and perseverance and tolerance and love for the family, okay? And I like was talking to the people next to me. I was like, and all of this, other than giving your son a machete,
no, but like
Abraham a machete to like behead your son to send a message of love. Like there's tons of ways to send a message of love.
And it actually affects loyalty. Like Abraham, his son.
Yes, Isaac.
Right?
Isaac and Ishmael.
How would you? What kind of relationship would they have after that incident? Like next time, Abraham's like, hey, Isaac or Ismail, depending on the tradition.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, do you want to go get ice cream? And he's like, Dad, you didn't have another dream, did you? Like, are you? No, but am I really going with you?
But again, that's true. But again, the response to that would be like, you guys are being so arrogant to assume that God doesn't have a wisdom behind.
Yeah, my answer to any time anyone says that you guys are being arrogant.
Yeah,
I'm like, you believe in a book where this is where you think it's the absolute truth and everything. I'm always like, I am being arrogant. It's okay. I have no problems with, because arrogance is just a matter of perception.
Not arrogance compared to the Muslim that says this, arrogant compared to God. Like you guys are saying, oh, that doesn't make sense for God to do this. They would say, like, who are you to decide what makes sense for God to do, right? You might think this
that exists. It's real.
We are at least exist. So
I know, but
we are on the higher bar.
But when you were speaking as a person that believed in God, but not in the Quran, right? Because it seems so unreasonable, right? It seems so petty. But then the Muslim will come to you and be like, but you as a human cannot understand the wisdom in this book, right? There's so much wisdom, and there's a reason for everything he's asking of you, and for everything he's concerned about you doing. But it's beyond you. Like you as a true follower, as a slave of God, shouldn't be questioning God. You should just be following God. It's not your place to even decide whether this makes sense or not.
And then your response would be that, when it comes to wisdom, I agree with you on the second syllable.
Okay.
But the dumb part of wisdom, sure. The whiz, I don't know.
Okay.
No, but I know what you're saying. It's just that I always, when they come out and they feel like this whole idea that where this is offensive or arrogant or you're not being respectful, all of that, I always kind of tell them, I'm like, you believe that a book that says I should be killed, that I am immoral, I've gone astray, I am doomed to eternal hellfire and damnation and torture and fire. You believe that that book is a divine word of the Creator. Right? I'm sitting here, I'm just writing blogs and articles. Who should be more offended?
Yeah.
Like who said it doesn't? When they act like they're the ones who are offended, it doesn't make any sense because.
And I liked your quote. I think it's from your book when you said, if we talk about Muslims the same way the Quran talks about non-believers, eyes would roll. That was a very good quote.
Heads would roll.
Heads would roll.
Yeah.
Because if they're gonna talk about hate speech, the first laws when it comes to hate speech should be about holy books. They have the most hates.
This is
Even compared to like the far right groups like Geert Wilders or other people, I think that the Bible and the Quran have more violent verses than Marine Le Pen does.
And it's not just. I mean, a lot of the things are just vile. I mean, after the Charlie Hebdo attack happened, I was talking to a group of people, and I wrote about this in the book as well. And there were basically a bunch of really drunk American Muslims that night. So they were talking about how Charlie Hebdo had something because they're very disrespectful and they actually say write and draw a lot of mean things about religions. And so I just told them Deuteronomy 22 says that if a woman's found not to be a virgin on her wedding night, then she should be stoned to death on her father's doorstep because she has played the whore. She's a whore of Israel. That's right. And
whore of Babylon. That's me.
Yeah, and then that a woman who's been raped should marry her rapist.
Yeah,
That's also in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
In the New Testament, there are lots of passages that talk about women should be quiet in submission to their husbands. They should just stay quiet in church. They shouldn't speak up. In the Quran, there's obviously you can beat your wife, fight Jews and Christians until they pay the tax or they convert. Kill the disbelievers. There's so many, all of these things. What's more offensive,
also,
this or a Charlie Hebdo cartoon?
You can have sex slaves if you follow the Quran.
Oh yeah, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, if Charlie Hebdo is hate speech, and if you're actually going to have a problem with it because you think it's hate speech, then you have to have a problem with the holy books. I mean, if any of us wrote the Bible or the Quran, last week, we just published it. Can you imagine what would happen? Do you think anybody would say, no, just look at the nuances, see how to interpret what Armin really said. He didn't really mean. Nobody'd look at that. No. They take his words, they tweet it, they do screenshots, be like, look at this is what he says. He says you should beat your wife.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to give him the luxury of metaphorical interpretation.
Yeah.
So this
toothpaste or toothbrush or not, right, Miss Mark?
Yeah. I've got stuff that I've written in my book or stuff that I do on Twitter, and everybody will. They will hold me to my words, and that's good. I think it's a good thing. Why would you do that for human beings, but not do that for a supposedly divine being?
The reason why they would say what we're doing is more offensive is because that's an offense. What they're doing is an offense against man. What we're doing is an offense against God. So even if you feel like it's a lighter offense, when you're offending God, when you have a sin against God, you're offending a much greater being, a much holier being. And that's why
is it God or is it like a really insecure boyfriend? It's just, I'm really hurt.
Yeah.
Why do you offend? You created the
they don't have
universe.
Sorry.
Yeah. He gets triggered like Trump by Saturday Night Live.
I know. Yeah.
He's like, they're so mean. They're really mean.
I would imagine if God had like a Twitter.
Yeah.
He would tweet on Saturday mornings like Trump does, and he'd probably end everything with the hashtag "just saying."
Just saying.
But then again, a Muslim was saying when we're offending God, actually we're not affecting God at all. God doesn't get hurt by these things. We're hurting ourselves by committing such a great sin. That would be their sin.
It's like, so yeah, it shouldn't bother you. I'm hurting
And
myself.
even though God himself predetermined you to be a non-believer, right? So like it's really because in the Quran it says that God created people non-believers. Like it's something he masakna qulubahum, like we inserted non-belief in their hearts.
Yeah.
and then he punish you for being non-believer.
Yeah.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Like, get
You
your
shouldn't
shit.
think so much. That's
Yeah.
what they say.
like get your shit together. Like he's creating you non-believer, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's permanent in your heart that you're gonna be a non-believer. At least that's the interpretation I was taught.
Yeah.
So at the same time, so you're irredeemable. So God already knows all your journey. He knows where you're gonna masturbate, all of these things. He knows all of these things. But
this is a great first example of that. That's the main representative example you found.
like masturbation in Karbala, right?
What was that?
That's gonna be an episode
It's about
in our
accountability
podcast.
on the day of
So like he knows exactly everything you're gonna do, and yet he gonna punish you for what he already predetermined you what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And what the hell? So on one hand he says like non-believers like deserve to be killed and stuff, and yet he said I created these people to be non-believers.
Yeah.
And yet he tells you I gave you free will. Like okay, like what the hell is going on?
Yeah,
So it's like there's a free will, there's a predetermination. These two concepts contradict each other because already God or Allah in that regard knows what you're gonna, everything you're gonna do, and He has all your journey.
Yeah.
Yet He gave you free will, but He already predicted what the fuck, man.
It's so unfortunate that we actually have to have these conversations.
At like 21st
And that's why I
century.
think we need to, like, I would really prefer to zoom out a little bit and just talk about the idea of faith and why believing things without evidence is toxic. But what happens is that when you get pulled into these debates where someone's like, okay, if you really want to debate me, let's talk about this. I believe that Jonah did live in a fish. You don't, so let's debate. And then you get pulled into, and it's just so, it's, I guess, intellectually deadening to sit there and
talk about
have
fish.
conversations about whether somebody lived in a fish or whether someone flew on a winged horse or, you know, whether all of this stuff, whether the supernatural deities are writing books. And, you know, it's sort of like if you have this, if you're like, unicorns don't exist because there's no evidence of them. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny chance that anything exists, like, you know, Bertrand Russell's celestial teapot, or fairies or ghosts or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is what it is. And then someone who actually believes in, there's one group that believes in blue unicorns, another believes in green unicorns, and they're fighting, killing each other. And then they call you, like, come debate with us. He's like, this is what we think about unicorns. And suddenly you're involved in this whole conversation about why unicorns don't exist, and if a unicorn did exist, this is what the unicorn said, and why this is logical or not. And the whole, like, this whole conversation is just so, it's so strange that these conversations actually happen.
But Raza Aslan has a different view. Raza Aslan has a different view. Religions are beautiful in nature. Follow your idea, Raza Aslan.
What did he say about Indonesia? I didn't get that.
Well, he said that women are 100% equal to men in Indonesia.
I mean, that's just making up.
Well, no, I want to defend him on this. He's right when it comes to one thing. Women and men in Indonesia have the same rates of circumcision. So the women, it's about 86%. Men, it's about 90%, and they're all generally mutilated.
86.
So they are. Yep. According to
diversity. Hashtag diversity.
Right.